I'd like to call this meeting of the City Council, Indianola City Council for September 3rd, 2024 to order. Will please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll call the roll.
Pledge allegiance to the flag.
Councilmember Beach. Here. Wade.
Here.
Richardson.
Present.
Dalby.
Here.
Stones.
Present.
Armstrong.
Here.
Mayor Harris.
All right, so we have opportunities for public comment. A couple of rules, just so that we are all on the same page here, that presentations are limited to 3 minutes. There will be a clock on the screen as well. Please keep your comments to the item that you're asked to speak on, and then if you, there will not be any dialogue with the council at that time. If you have something that you want to talk about that's on the agenda later on, you can wait till that time as well and speak at that particular time if you wish to do so. Please give your name and address when you are called to the podium, and we will then start the clock as soon as that is finished. So the one I have up for public comment tonight is Nicole Duncan Lutheran. You want to come to the podium and give us your name and address and state what you'd like to talk to us about.
Hello, Nicole Duncan Lutheran, 306 North 17th Street. I am just quickly speaking, showing my support of the urban chicken ordinance. I know we had great support at the last meeting. Lots of emails were sent to council members. You know, I know there was also some discussion around the fees that would be associated, and I believe it was mentioned that, you know, those would be part of a fee schedule, so it wouldn't be baked into the ordinance per se, which sounds like it makes sense. I would just like to ask that council members think about what they're hearing from their constituents, not just their own opinions, maybe their exact, you know, one next door neighbor, but what are you hearing from the members of the community? And I'm sure you've all received, you know, comments or feedback both for and against, but I just would like to just ask that you do that with an open mind and think about who you're representing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. Next up is Spencer Waugh. Name and address, Spencer, if you would, please.
Sure thing. Spencer Waugh, 204 West Girard. Good evening. I can make this very brief. I just am here to thank the Indianola City Council for your service to our community. As many of you know, I am running for House District 21, and I just wanted to let you know that if I'm elected, I really look forward to working with the Indianola City Council to make sure that we can establish a communication plan so that we can have really positive and robust two-way communication between local governments and the state legislature. So Mayor Erickson has my contact information, which includes my email address and my direct cell number, so that if any of you do want to start that dialogue sooner rather than later, I'm happy to start that conversation. But again, first and foremost, thank you for the service to our community. We all appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak in open forum, public comment? Okay, move on to the agenda. The consent agenda is next on the calendar here. So I'd like, anybody want to pull anything off the consent agenda?
Steve, I'd like to pull 5G, please.
Okay.
I'd like to pull item L.
Item L. Anything else? Entertain a motion then for items, all the items with the exception of item G and item L.
Moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Beach.
Aye.
Wade.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Dalby.
Aye.
Stones.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
We'll move on to item G then, the consideration of an ordinance for the city of Code of Indianola for the keeping of urban chickens within the city limits. Do I have a motion to, you want to have discussion first and then make that motion, or what would you like to do?
Just motion's fine.
Okay, let's make a motion in a second, please.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion in a second. Discussion.
I just wanted to bring this back around again to see if there was any change of heart. I know it is a polarizing topic throughout the community. As Nicole had mentioned, you know, there's been a lot of emails from constituents to council members, so I just wanted to pull it in and see if there was any more discussion that wanted to be had on this topic.
Anyone else? For my consideration here on this, and I was one of the ones who voted against it in the last time, and I will say that the fee issue is one issue that I have concern about. The other issue is the actual inspection process that we go through and making sure that we do full inspections on those. I know there are some things that we have as part of the ordinance for inspections, but I want to make sure that we have inspections on decommissioning as well as the commissioning, and also for the siting of the particular coops and buildings. Parts of those are in the current ordinance, but not all of the ordinance. And so those are my main concerns and considerations as well. So with that said, go ahead.
So say after we met the first time, I did go and talk with staff, talk to Tim, Kevin, and just to get their feelings on how the ordinance was. They felt good about it. So staff was feeling good about some of the concerns that we had. So kind of keeps me where I was.
Anyone else? Seeing none, then clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ray?
Aye.
Richardson?
No.
Dolby?
No.
Solms?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-2. We'll move on to item L then. Do I have a motion and a second for item L?
So moved.
Got a motion? Second?
Second.
Second? Discussion, item L.
I just had a couple questions on it. This is my first time through this, I just wanted to ask if these things were normal. And the first one being paying the whole contract up front.
If it's what normal?
Paying the whole contract up front.
Yes, yes. It's an annual fee.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the second one, it mentioned that one of their responsibilities is evaluating employee performance. To what degree do they do that?
They're working under their license. Everybody works under the physician's license.
Okay,
So if it's on the medical side, he has authority to actually terminate. And that's in the Iowa code. And discipline.
and
I'm sorry, go ahead. You're fine.
so that leads into my next question. Where is he located?
Where is he located? In Des Moines. He works for Unity Point downtown.
Do they come down and evaluate our processes and?
Yes, yeah, that's part of the agreement. Okay. He'll run through all of our protocols and our processes, and then we'll participate in any of our exercises and special events. The last one did too.
How often do they come down and?
And this one here is going to be a little bit different because it's outlined. Probably you'll see him a lot more than the previous one. Not to say that we weren't getting appropriate mentoring guidance, but yeah, it's more of a precise contract or agreement, I should say. And he really wants to participate in the program, which is great for us.
Thank you for that.
Ron, do you have a question?
No, I was just trying to educate
I mean,
myself on
just
the
to let,
process.
yeah, we actually interviewed 3 physicians for this position, or for the position of medical director. And all 3 of them would have been excellent choices.
wasn't questioning that. I just wanted to understand
No, that's fine. No.
what the role entailed and all. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Stones?
Aye.
Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Richardson?
Aye.
Dolby?
Oops, sorry, go ahead.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0, 6-0. Got a little ahead of myself there. All right. Council committee reports. I was at a partnership meeting on Friday. One of the things we talked about earlier this year was about getting involved and trying to be more of a partner with the Des Moines Partnership. I was at that meeting. It was the Legislative Policy Committee. I sent a note, I believe, to all of you, just kind of recapping some things. Basically, the discussion from a state legislative perspective was on the home rule and local control issue. The problem with that is the current Iowa code basically excludes taxation issues from local control. And so if that was ever going to change, that was some of the discussion that other people in the meeting brought up. Problem is that that's a pretty heavy lift to get that passed if something would ever be done in that area. So really the discussion also centered around some TIF dollars and some of the issues that came out in the last legislative session was some things to change the way the TIF dollars were allocated. And there's some concern that that will be done again this next time around. And so that was one of the things that was discussed briefly with a number of different folks at that particular meeting. And one of the issues that we all talked about was how TIF dollars actually spur a lot of economic development and how that is beneficial for a lot of the communities. So that was some of the things that were discussed. There'll be a couple of more meetings. I know Steve was going to try to make another one as well. And I'll continue to do so as well there too. Anybody else have any other committee reports? Treasurer's report. I did have some questions for Roxanne this morning. I think she probably has an answer for those. If you looked at the treasurer's report, there were some areas that she highlighted in yellow in the messages she sent out. And I kind of asked her to provide some information on that if she would, so.
Okay. So Steve specifically asked about the Fund 340, which is the City Hall Public Safety Building Fund. That one is in the negative, and the expense percentage is 59.2%. There was very little that was actually budgeted in that fund for this year because we had anticipated that that would be funded by the bond in November. But since we are going a different route, and we are now planning more of the revenue bond, but it's actually now kind of in Earl's hands how we need to fund that. So right now it's in the negative and right now it's over budget. But this is a discussion point that we'll have to decide how we're going to fund this. But right now currently it's for the demolition and getting prepared to move community development and administration out of this building and into the building on the Regions Bank side. As far as the other funds, was that the main concern that you had, or was there anything?
Well, yeah, that and I know the park and rec revenue, I know that special revenue bonds, I guess special
Yes.
revenue.
Yes.
That one is the other one too.
That one was actually an expense for Hometown Pride. I spoke with Doug. Doug said that's going to be reimbursed by Hometown Pride. They are currently working on raising funds for the Iowa Great Places Grant this calendar year, and they will be reimbursing the city for that expense. So those funds will be reimbursed. It's just right now that fund is currently in the hole. Any other questions?
Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions on treasurer's report? Do we have a motion? No, we don't need a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Stones? Armstrong?
Aye.
Beach. Aye.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Feldy.
Aye.
That's a 6-0. Receive and file the EMS 2024 EMS billing activity report. We have a motion and a second, and then we'll get to the chief and let him answer any questions.
So moved.
Second.
Chief, yours. Anybody have any questions? You walked up here for nothing.
I get my steps in.
There you go. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilmember Ray.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Feldy.
Aye.
Stones.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Beach.
That's a 6-0. Community update. I did not receive anything from the mayor on that. I don't know if there's anything anybody else wants to add today. Ben, do you have anything you want to add? Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the appointment of Teresa Swan Tuitt to the Library Board of Trustees to fill a vacancy for a term beginning immediately and expiring July 1, 2028. Motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Richardson.
Aye.
Feldy.
Aye.
Stones.
Aye.
Armstrong.
Aye.
Beach.
Aye.
Ray.
Aye.
Approved 6-0. Old business. Public consideration, discussion, direction on proposed chicken permit fees. Do I have a motion to open that discussion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Discussion. Ben, do you want to lead this off and go from there?
Sure. Prior to Kristen returning to college, she did a call around to all the cities that we compared to. And we do have, I have a little bit different report and whatnot, but basically we have some additional fees that are outlined right there. They range anywhere from $25 to $100 as far as the fee is concerned. We are looking to our other cities with regard to how they allocate those fees. And then, of course, as we are performing those inspections and we are calculating the amount of costs involved, we may adjust those fees from time to time, either up or down as needed. The fee would be at your discretion, and we would be seeking your direction this evening so that we could incorporate it into a resolution for your consideration during the next meeting.
Staff did recommend $75 to $90, just depending on, just to cover staff time on that, and then a $35 to $40 annual renewal.
I ask a question.
Right ahead.
Ben, so appreciate all the work and the recommendation from staff. I mean, so we took the time with staff to break down what they think it's gonna take to do these, what it should cost. So if we're in that $75 to $90 range, that will cover.
That's what we're anticipating.
We're gonna track it, and if it doesn't, we can amend it
Adjust
again.
accordingly.
Do all of our fees do this? Do they account for all of staff time, or is it partial? So, you know, this is to do all staff's time. Do we have other fees that are like half staff's time? It's like a partial reimbursement.
It's actually not. We typically, as far as the community development department and our inspection services that we provide, we typically work to cover costs of
Okay.
staff as far as the actual inspection, their, you know, equipment, their vehicle, that type of thing that all gets rolled into a number that we apply.
I just want to make sure that with whatever fee we go with is consistent to what our other fees are. So if it was to do all staff time, that we stay consistent, and if it's a partial, that we stay consistent, so.
Do we have a ballpark as far as how much time we think it's gonna take for the permitting process and the inspection process?
Well, I do know that, as Jackie just mentioned, the $75 to $90 range was calculated backwards to the amount of hours that we anticipate utilizing our inspectors to go out there times their hourly rate. So I'm not exactly sure of the time. Do you recall the time?
No, Emily didn't provide that. $70 to $90. That was a lot.
Essentially, if we went somewhere in the middle of the 70-90 for the original initial permit fee, we would be at a pretty good basis for whether it was below or above. And the same with the renewal.
Correct.
80-40?
Yeah.
Refresh my memory on the renewal, then is there an inspection involved there as well?
My understanding, yes.
It's annual or biannual, I can't remember.
Annually.
Annual.
Good.
Then do you need a motion to be made?
No motion, it would just be your council direction. It sounds like 80 and 40 is the numbers that we would incorporate into a
Try it.
I'm good with
into a
that.
resolution for next meeting.
Put it in the middle.
Good with that.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay. All you needed done? Okay. Did we have a motion on that? No question.
No motion.
Okay, all right. I do know that before we get too far into the game tonight, and Ben, I'm gonna let you do the city manager's report here, but I'd like to introduce Bill if we can too, so.
Absolutely, in fact,
Great.
that was an oversight on my part.
Okay.
Bill Meddy, wouldn't mind coming up.
We're gonna put you on the spot right away.
Right away.
First day in, you get on the spot.
Excited to hear your
Our new
speech, Bill.
associate planner, and we'll have him introduce himself.
Thank you. And my name is Bill Meddy. I used to live in Indianola for quite a bit of time. When I first moved to Iowa, I served on the Board of Adjustment as the chairperson for some time. I served as a member of the steering committee for the zoning code rewrite. So while I lived in Indianola, I was the planning and zoning administrator for the city of Knoxville. And then I moved, I was a city planner with the city of Waukee. And then I took this position after talking with Ben for a little while, and excited to be here, excited to work with you guys.
Glad to have you.
We are more than excited to have Bill.
We're excited.
I think somebody is more than excited. Yeah, more than a yes.
With the loss of Charlie, Emily, and Kristen.
Yeah.
Kristen's working remote.
Yeah. Now, Bill, we're glad to have you on board. Thank you very much. You bet.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yep. Thank you, Ben. Okay, Ben, it's up to you.
Great, thank you. Can you switch it over, Jason, to? Okay, Mayor and Council, or it's actually Mayor Pro Tem and Council. Appreciate your time this evening. We have been working, of course, with all of you, with our city staff on trying to determine the best direction for our facilities plans going forward. And this was in harmony with what we've been working on in the past and how we're trying to take that plan and move it forward. And this is the opportunity really to catch the public up on some of the discussions that have been had and why we've gone the direction that we have gone. Ultimately, the city council historically was looking at the construction of a new public safety building / city hall in the downtown corridor, basically in the location that we are at today. As a two-step process, one building city hall and the second making it so that we have a connection to the County Justice Center with green space and additional parking that would provide further benefits to the square. This first step was the plan for City Hall. And so we started a process to gather all of the needs together, to understand the issues, to try to work towards the construction and building of a City Hall downtown. And that started a process wherein we brought professionals to assist us. OPN Architects was brought on board, as well as Ryan Companies as our construction manager. And we went through quite the process of trying to evaluate our needs and trying to determine the best direction to move forward. However, with any project management, you have three parts of that project management. You have the cost, you have the time, and you have the scope. And as we had been adding more and more scope to that project, the cost started going up considerably. And of course, in the last 2 years, there have been considerable increases in the overall indexes. So a construction project that cost $40 million 2 years ago has now gone up 30%. So having changed nothing at all 2 years ago to today would be $52 million project. So the combination of those two things, the indexes and the construction costs, the complicated nature of having a downtown city hall and public safety building that had a lot of apparatus and movement of vehicular traffic within the area, and the overall scope increases, that made the project really go much larger in size and scope than we had envisioned. Ultimately, the costs were coming in close to $74 million. $74 million would have been extremely impactful on our residents. And that was a real challenge. And so as our stakeholder group was meeting with our professionals, trying to determine how to get it into a format that would be more digestible to the public at large. We started looking at some of the constraints, some of the issues that we were facing, and we tried to lower the scope back down. And one thing that we initially started talking about is what if we remove the city hall component and focus straight in on the needs, the public safety needs. By removing city hall out of the public safety building location, it lowered the cost down to $49.7 million. But still, that was considerable in its size and its impact on our residents at large. And so as we were having individual discussions with council members and with department heads, we started trying to balance out that cost and trying to figure out our value system in this whole thing. And there's really two competing values that we are trying to work through. And one is the need for quality public safety. Having good facilities to take care of our staff, our highly trained staff that serves each and every one of us every day as our first frontline responders. But we had to balance that with the cost of the property taxes that would impose on the community at large. And how do we weigh that balance, recognizing that we needed to expand our footprint and expand our level of service and be able to have expansion capacity over time, yet trying to not do it in such an impactful manner on the residents who live here today. Throughout this process, there was two new pieces of information that came since the council hired those professionals on board. The first one was the county land exchange. Our city council and our county administration got together and talked about how we could be more beneficial partners with each other and work to support each other a little bit better. And towards that end, we ended up going through a process to exchange lands with Warren County. The city of Indianola will be acquiring 3 parcels of property, and the Warren County will be receiving the library as an additional office space that's kitty corner and co-located close to the Warren County Administration Building. And so it's a very optimal exchange of property that will allow us to revitalize portions of town. It also made it so we are starting to expand our mindset of what are the constraints we're trying to overcome and how best to accommodate those things. The second thing that we are trying to figure out is the cost of single phase versus double phase construction. When we were looking at building a new fire station city hall downtown, we were looking at building the fire station portion first so that we could then relocate our fire operations into that new facility, demo the rest of City Hall, and then build the rest of the new City Hall so that it could be constructed moving forward. But building that new fire station first meant we had to shore it up in order to demo the building here. And then we would have to marry up the additional portion of City Hall to the foundation and each of the floors going up. And that 2-phase construction effort cost an additional $7 million in 15 months worth of construction time. And because of that, it really added more cost to the project than we had anticipated. And so we started looking at options of how we could find a different location for our firefighters to work from so that we could enjoy a single phase construction. Part of that discussion came into the idea of, are there other city facility needs out there? And one of those needs that we have is for a new public works building. Could we construct a new public works building and relocate our fire department officials into that building temporarily while we put a new city hall here? That discussion opened up a whole line of questioning about where our firefighters should be. And of course, the impact of having large apparatus within the downtown area. So as we started sitting down with the council members and talking to them about how we move forward, what direction, several good questions came up from our elected leaders about that needed to be answered of the public at large so that we could go and ask the public for their support at the ballot box. Some of those questions were, one, we are going to remove City Hall out of the City Hall Public Safety Building. How are we going to pay for it and where will it eventually go? We have a temporary location planned in the Regents Bank building and the Optimate tenant space, but where is our long-term goal for City Hall? Second, if we're gonna try to save $7 million in 15 months of construction time, where would the fire department go during the interim, during construction? And how are we planning to fund that? How much would that cost? Of course, we're sensitive to the fact that we want to take care of the businesses that we have in town. Regions Bank is a tenant in that location today. What are the plans for the library? As we've entered into this agreement to exchange land with the Warren County, it is envisioned that the library would be relocating to be an anchor on the 6th Street area behind the grain elevators, and revitalize that whole area, that blighted area, industrial area along the Somerset McVeigh trails, and how that could be a real positive effort within our community to revitalize that area, walkable community restaurants, and tie eventually that trail out to Martinsdale and create a link. But in order to move the library, we have to first move the public works out of that area, because public works is currently there. If we're moving public works out of that area, where are they gonna go? What's their long-term plans, and how much is that gonna cost? These are a lot of very good questions that we were asking amongst ourselves and trying to put the answers together so that we could be responsible or responsive to the public at large, and answering their questions, because ultimately this really comes down to, what if this fails at the ballot box? With so many unanswered questions, with such a high threshold of costs, is there a different way for us to potentially move forward? And so we really started looking at a plan B, and what we're calling a City of Indianola Vision 2030. And this is still in the formative stages. We're still working with elected leaders, we're still working with our professionals to try to figure out the best direction moving forward. But we have some tentative plans that we'd like to share tonight. This is basically a holistic facilities plan that the City of Indianola would be looking at. And it's important to note this presentation I'm doing right now is really just to bring the public along, but it's also been videoed by our communications manager, and we'll be sharing it in small segments on Facebook as well. The first thing that you do when trying to determine the best path forward as far as project management is concerned is to look at those critical path items, those prerequisites that have to be completed before another step can move forward. That's really the best way to move forward. And we have two critical path issues. One is the fire department, and the second is with regard to the library. As far as the fire department is concerned, we have to maintain operations during construction. And that was really a challenge for us because of the location we are intending to build on in the downtown. Of course, cost of demolition is undetermined at this point because of things like asbestos or other issues within this building. And the cost driver in the whole thing was not only were we trying to keep all of our apparatus together in the downtown area, which meant a very large fire station, but we were trying to make it so that we didn't have vehicular traffic crossing pedestrian traffic. So that created a lot of turn radius issues and occupied a lot of space in our downtown. And then we started just thinking about it in a more globalistic sense. We are a growing city. We have a lot of different developments on our doorsteps and a lot of homes on the horizon. Is it responsible for us to try to put all of our eggs in one basket by putting all of our fire department apparatus in one location in our community? Or does it make more sense to take a more phased approach like you see in high growth cities, where you're putting in smaller fire departments strategically located within our community? And so that has really opened our minds to the opportunity for us to maybe take certain phases of our facility plan and carry those initially up front. The second is the library. If we're going to relocate the library to the what I call the 6th Street area out behind the grain elevators, we first have to relocate streets, parks, and stormwater out of there. We have to demo the public works facilities that we have, and we have to, in order to do that, we have to put conceptual plans, costs together for the library. So one of the things that we want to do with the library is we need to go through a community engagement effort to determine what is going to be in that library and work with the friends of the library board, the library staff, and the community at large to really determine and put our arms around what it's going to look like and how much it's going to cost. And so we need some conceptual plans, because it's hard to go to potential donors and ask them for contributions when they don't have a vision of what it's going to be. So we need to be able to share a story so that we can do fundraising, and so we can also look at legislative opportunities that would make it so that it would help fund the library moving forward. So those are some prerequisites or some critical path items that we're trying to take care of. We started looking at what is all of our entire financial portfolio, what are the different opportunities we have to maybe take care of some of these smaller projects first that would pave the way towards doing the overall project later. And how can we build trust with the community along the way by managing projects well in a smaller fashion. And one of those opportunities is not necessarily to go after a revenue or a general obligation bond that requires a vote, but to go after a revenue bond. And so these are the options that we're looking at right now to determine what is bird in the hand. This is what we know we can achieve today versus by going through the ballot box with a lot of unanswered questions. It takes the pressure off us when it comes to a November deadline, and it allows us to pledge a revenue stream as collateral instead of general obligation properties, which is the tax benefit of tax value of every home within our community. Basically, we have two options that we're considering. One is a $24.5 million option, which is over a 20-year period, or we have a $30 million option over a 30-year period. This is a little bit of a divergence of direction because the rest of my presentation, or most of my presentation, is focused on the 20-year option, but there are some other ideas that have come up that utilize the 30-year option. The first thing that we want to do in this first phase of construction is to basically build a standalone fire station somewhere on the north end of our community. That is the highest growth area, and we need some assistance from our professionals to help us determine the very best location. But when we consider trying to put all of our apparatus in one location, there's not very many fire stations out there that really fit that bill. There's one in Des Moines and one in Cedar Rapids that are 8-bay fire stations. What should we do if we're going to try to consider having multiple locations? And so it's by phasing this, we are really looking at having 2 locations for fire in the future and building the expansion capacity in the second as our city grows at a time that makes sense for the growth of our community. Basically, the benefits of this are, one, it better supports future growth, and it takes care of the timing of the construction based on the need for that growth to cover those areas. Second, it enhances our response times by not having by having multiple locations to send our first responders from. We can get to different areas of town more quickly. It's better for disaster planning because if a tornado were to come through and hit the fire station and take out our equipment, it's not likely to do that in 2 separate locations. So it's better for disaster planning overall. It also removes the fire from the downtown, allows us the elbow room, if you will, to better plan for a public safety building and a police department and city hall in the downtown area without the need to take care of all the large apparatus. And of course, by building a separate standalone fire station, we don't need to relocate our fire operations from the existing building we're in today. And so that means they can remain up and operational until the new building is built. And of course, it's a phased cost structure, so it's less expensive upfront for the first phase. Some drawbacks are that it does, of course, take our firefighters out of the downtown. We're trying to keep as many staff members downtown to help keep our downtown more vibrant. And so it does take some of our personnel out of the downtown area. We enjoy an extremely good relationship between our police department and our fire department today, and we partly attribute that to being co-located in the same building. And so separating those out means that we're going to have to work harder to make a positive relationship. And of course, when you're building in a phased approach, it always costs more over time. So it's really trying to balance the needs of meeting today's needs with today's dollars versus tomorrow's needs with today's dollars. Concurrently, under phase 1C, we're looking at building a new public works building. This location for this new facility would be out on Route 92, 2nd Avenue, which is right behind the activity center. The city currently owns 5.5 acres of ground back there. And I'm showing pictures of a public works building I built in 2018 that cost $2.2 million. Recognizing that infrastructure would need to be brought back to that back area, and of course, cost increases since 2018. That's probably a $5 million building today. But what does that do for us? Well, building one out there has really good access to our highway system. It's on city-owned land that we have today. It centralizes our park operations with the recreation folks, so that they're located very close in proximity. It removes all of the operations from the Sixth Street sub area and allows us to move them out here into the new facility. And basically removes the obstacles of the library, community center, commercial development, and all the improvements into the area behind the grain elevators can move forward without having the obstruction of both city and county public works facilities out there. Currently, we're working on trying to improve the Howard building today. That's where Regions Bank is located, Impact, and Optimate were previous tenants in that building as well. And so one of the things that we're doing actually right now is demoing some of the inner parts of that building. The council recalls there is some water infiltration that took place in the past, and we put a new roof on that. That's the explanation of why the fund went over and is negative right now. And so part of that is recognizing that inside there is some water damage. So we're removing wallpaper, ceiling tiles, and carpet to prepare for the city staff moving into this area now that we've taken care of the water infiltration. Of course, that was permissible for us to put the roof on and for us to do these improvements because we had passed a resolution outlining that we are intending to pay back those costs with a general obligation bond. We would now need to reimburse ourselves with portions of the revenue bond. But this allows us to move out our city community development department and administration departments into the Regions Bank building. So ultimately, the next phase, phase 1E, and this is going to take place at various stages, is to move our fire personnel out to the fire station when the timing is right, move our streets and parks folks off of the 6th Street area into the new Public Works building when that is right. This is where we're going to have a little bit of a divergence here on this $24 million option versus the $30 million option. And that was, we were intending to use the Regions Bank portion of that building for our police department operations. So we may go that path, but we may go a different path, and something for the council to discuss. And then move administration and community development to the Optimate tenant space. I mentioned that we've got two different schools of thought, and one of the things that we're evaluating when I shared this presentation to all of our city departments, the departments that are being asked to be patient is our police department and our community development and internal services departments, administration departments. Because what we're really saying is we're putting you into a temporary location while we go forward and try to get ready for an election in the future. And one of the and that's going to be a different phase I'll talk about in just a minute. But one of the things that the police department really talked about is, well, let's take a look at the facilities we have and could we put money into them? So I'll talk about that in just a moment. But setting that on the shelf for a minute, what we would envision is doing the demo of City Hall, doing the demo of the streets and parks buildings out on the 6th Street area, and basically doing the demo of the county buildings out in that area as well, and clearing everything off for the future construction, all within that revenue bond. And if there's funding available at the very end, it would be to relocate some of the utilities that may be in the way of that overall layout of where we're intending to go downtown. All of that is considered phase 1 in either that $24 or $30 million option. Phase 2 really gets into the library and the community center. And that really starts off with us having a community engagement activity that starts off fairly soon. We need to get the community's input in the layout and design of that anchor tenant of that overall community redevelopment area. In order to go forward and try to pay for that building, it is our goal and our hope to raise as many dollars as we can through fundraising to at least come up with the cost of materials. That would be our goal. When the library was built back in the 80s here in town, it was built through all donations. And so what a great goal for us to try to attain here locally. But we have another opportunity, and that is we own a considerable amount of land around this library right on the Somerset Trail. And the goal and the thought there is that we would be able to, by the way, that has no taxable value right now because it's all government property, and upzone that so that we can have restaurants and bars and housing and a walkable community that would have that anchor of a library. By working with a private developer to try to help build the library and build that overall area, we can maximize the value to hopefully construct the library without having costs that would be a burden on the taxpayers through any kind of a bond or either general obligation or revenue bond. We may need to work with TIF. We may need to have remuneration on the back end through the valuations that would be increasing out there. There's other options that we can look at. But the entire goal of this revitalization area is to not make it a burden on the taxpayer at all, to allow us to move forward through that revitalization. All of this is already outlined in our 6th Street sub-area plan that's on our website today. We would like to do an update to that because what was not envisioned in the 6th Street sub-area plan that's on our website is the actual construction of the library as an anchor tenant. And that we really see as a very positive move forward. That and the conjunction of acquiring the county's land out here really makes it so that we can create a new heartbeat in our community and revitalization moving forward. All of those projects are prerequisite projects to take care of the needs of our community and to remove obstacles out of the way, with the thought process of putting a new city hall and general obligation bond on the ballot in 2026. By taking those large obstacles out of the way, we make it more financially digestible. Our community is larger in the future, and it would make it so that we could have an extended period of time to communicate with the residents to incorporate their questions, their thoughts, their needs into our overall designs so that we're fully fleshed out and prepared by 2026. Because it was really feeling quite constrained, having only about 6 to 8 weeks to communicate all this to the public at large. But what could be included? One of the things that we were really concerned about putting on the ballot in this fiscal year was that not only would we be excluding out City Hall, but we would be not answering all of those questions that were included earlier. When we start, even when I shared this vision a few years ago about green space and parking in the downtown area, it had always been envisioned that was going to be a separate project. Well, what could be included today is not only City Hall and police, but a community betterment and community placemaking, green space, interior gathering spaces, business connectivity, and parking enhancements as a total project 2 years from now, after we complete all of the other prerequisite projects that we have in process today. So it answers all the questions along the way, and it earns trust along the way. Of course, there would be future projects. We would love to see our bike trail tie out to and tie into the Martinsdale Trail, and be able to have a loop through Warren County. We do look at the Masonic Temple or the cafeteria as it's known to the locals who went to school here. It says Masonic Temple on the front, so I've been referring to that all along. It's like corrected. That's that could be updated and made into either City Hall or that could be made into a visitor center for our community. And then, of course, we are also acquiring the West Annex building from Warren County. And our intent and vision there is really to create more retail space on the square, private sector, for the creation of jobs, property taxes, and sales tax. So, timeline in all of this, really phase 1 is to determine what is going to be in that revenue bond, and are we going for the 24 or the $30 million bond, with the idea of building the standalone fire department and public works buildings concurrently, so that we can also remodel the Regis Bank building so that we can relocate all of our staff to the various locations. We can clear all of the buildings off that need to be cleared off for us to be able to set ourselves up properly for the future, and also take care of those utilities. All of that being taken care of up front. Concurrently, we also would like to work on the community engagement on the library and community center aspects of that. When I say community center, I think that's one of the questions that keeps coming up. The library also would, what we're envisioning is including some community gathering spaces in that as well. The libraries of the past have been known as the living rooms of the community. libraries of the future are really libraries that are more the kitchen of the community, a more actively based aspect where you might have maker spaces or business incubator space, where you could have technology centers and different things that can be incorporated to really make this a great heartbeat of our community. But also have community gathering spaces outside of the operations of the library that people could have a venue for different events and different things that might go on, or for a small business to be able to rent a space for a meeting, that type of thing. Of course, once we have the vision and the view and the layout and the look and the cost, then we can start going after donors and grants. And also look at public-private partnerships. Right now, public-private partnerships are not allowed in the state of Iowa like they are in other states. However, it is a very positive opportunity for us to work towards something that would benefit both private sector and public sector, for which we think the state legislature might have some desire to go down that direction. Privatization is something that may be very appealing to them. And so working on possible legislative changes could also be a benefit. If not, we'll make sure that we work within the constraints of the existing Iowa state law. Building the library in the community center, that was included phase 2. And phase 3 is really envisioning a new public or police department and city hall in the downtown area, spending a considerable amount of time, a few years, going through that communication effort with the community at large, so that when we do go for a general obligation bond, we can meet the needs of our community in a responsible manner. It's not only responsible in its cost, but in its application to the residents and those we serve. And then, of course, building a new city hall. That is Vision 2030 in a nutshell. What we are, as I was presenting this to the police department, one of the questions that really came up is, what if we start looking at other possibilities for taking that $5.5 million today to meet the police department's needs today as well? And one of the thoughts was potentially putting it in this building or other buildings that could meet our community's long-term needs. And when we studied this building back in 2018, there was an analysis done on it. It was really going to be quite expensive to redo this building. But mostly that was related to the fact that we were trying to keep fire downtown at that time. And we were looking at bay space, and we were looking at future growth and expansion space, and how would we add on to this building that's really configured quite poorly. But $5.5 million for one department, for a public safety, for the police department aspect, really would provide a significant amount of money for a new HVAC system, removing the boiler, putting a new roof on it, new windows and doors, and potentially opening up a building that could have a lot of expansion capacity for our police department's needs. And so we have engaged with Ryan and OPN companies to come in and evaluate to see if this is worth putting those dollars into this building, to see if that's a viable option. That could potentially meet our needs today, at least for the public, for the police department and fire department and public works departments, all within this revenue bond. And then what would be put on is a future city hall. And we've looked at other options there, such as looking at the Masonic Temple / cafeteria as a great location for a potential city hall in the future by putting a glass back on and on like the operative right next door that could have elevator and ADA access brought into that building that could meet our city hall needs. So it may be fluid, we may be adjusting. Right now is the time to do the analysis, and this again was really just to bring the community along so that we could build trust every step of the way. I recognize that there is a lot of moving pieces, and I've just shared a huge vision with the community, which can get really confusing really fast. But as a chess player, one of the things I recognize is that with the first move is really quite easy. You can say, I'm going to move this pawn here, I'm going to move this player over there, this piece over there. But with every additional step, it becomes exponential of its possibilities and which direction you're going to go. But ultimately, the goal is the same. As long as we engage with the community, we engage with our community's elected leaders, and we move forward in a responsible way that meets the level of service that we absolutely need to provide to the residents. We provide service to, but do so in a fiscally responsible manner. That will end up lead us to winning the game. That's where we are today, and that's our Vision 2030. And this is the opportunity for the council to propose other ideas, other thoughts, things that we're not considering in other directions as we continue to move forward. We envision that this is going to have a lot of meetings in the future, not just tonight's discussion.
Well, everybody's kind of gathering their thoughts here, so I just will say a couple of things real quickly. Back to your public-private partnerships, that was one of the things I forgot to mention about the meeting on Friday with the partnership group. And it was pointed out to them that public-private partnerships put those buildings, if they're built by the private groups, on the tax rolls for the time that those cities do not have absolute title to those properties. So if it's a 20-year lease back or whatever the case is, that property is on the tax rolls for 20 years, and that's a real advantage. And so I don't think some of the folks in that room understood that when we went to construction management at risk, that the legislation changed public-private partnerships. And so that's really a critical component that I think if we get the right partners to play with us at state capitol, that might be a change that could be made simply from the fact that I think it's a fairly easy lift if we just make sure that everybody's on board and understands that there is tax benefits to the communities in doing so. It's real economic development.
You know, it's my understanding in the past that there may have been cities that have used this. I think that this is the perfect mix of taking non-taxed property today and bringing it into the tax rolls, making it a benefit for a blighted area. And I think with small tweaks to the state code, we can work with our state legislators to help them understand how this could be a benefit, because if we can raise the materials through donations and we can use the rest of the property to help pay for, to maximize the profitability to a private developer to revitalize that area, that's the golden goose. It puts properties on the tax roll, it creates jobs, it creates sales taxes, property taxes, and it's really synergistic all the way through. And it makes it viable for an entity to build a library for us without necessarily putting that on the backs of the taxpayers. And that would be our ultimate goal.
Right. And that's where we have to get the coalitions together to do that, which could be master builders, associate general contractors, PDI, home builders, anybody that develops land could really be a part of the partner.
It still could be done. It just would have to be broken into different pieces. The city would have to do this component. You'd have to sell off that component.
Right.
It's just easier to do it through a partnership like I've seen in other states.
Right. That said, anybody else have any comments?
Can you go back to the slide that shows the property tax breakdown for, it was pretty early on?
Yeah. There's two slides, one with
The first one.
the very first one, $74
$79
million.
That one, sorry. Can you explain just a little bit more what that small graph is indicating on there?
Sure. If the city were to go forward with a $74 million project, it would first require voter approval, because you are basically utilizing everybody's property as the collateral for this obligation. And that would require not only their voter approval, but they would be accepting upon themselves a $3.70 cost per $1,000 value of their home. And so to show the cost per home in our community, if you had a $100,000 home, that would be $370 a year or $31 a month. And then you can multiply that out. If you have a $300,000 home, that would have been an impact of $1,100 a year. And so that becomes a real challenge in trying to justify the cost of this facility on the backs of existing residents today.
And my other thing was, can you explain the difference between the GO bond and the revenue bond in kind of more of a layman's terms?
Sure. So a general obligation bond it's collateral. So a general obligation bond, the collateral is the taxable value of your community. So it's the overall valuation of your community. A revenue bond utilizes a pledge of a revenue source, such as sewer rates or for IMU power rates or for lost sales taxes. Any of those revenue streams could be used to have as collateral towards a revenue bond.
On that chart there though, that's the $100,000 home, but that's the taxable value of the $100,000 home at $3.72, right?
This is calculated out with the rollback and everything
Right.
else included as of today, which is very complicated and changes each year.
Right. So just remember that if it's a $100,000 home, you have a 46%, you have only pay 46% of that value in taxable dollars. So it'd be 46 times three, whatever it is, 372, 370 or whatever it is, so.
Which calculates out.
Right, exactly. But I didn't want somebody to look at this and go, wait a minute, those numbers don't work out, so that's exactly it, yeah.
I think one of the things too with that too is that's just for a year. It's not after, you know, any assessments that go up or anything that happens down the road with what your home value could be. So that's your starting point, that's your ground zero. So, you know, with this, I just want to, you know, say kudos to Ben on getting us, you know, another option to potentially look at. And I just think we did a nice job of pivoting last minute to understand all of our needs that we have in the city, and not just a couple of them, and going, how are we going to address all of them so that if we address some of them, we don't roadblock ourselves on the other things. So I think it was just a good moment for us to kind of come together and look at that big holistic picture that, you know, we've been dying for people to look at for years now, going, you know, this can has been kicked down the road, that can's been kicked down the road. And I think we finally just said, hey, can we just stop kicking them all down the road? And what are we gonna do about all of them and not just one? So.
Well, I think we've had a mindset in the past of this is our objective and this is how we need to move forward to get there and very targeted, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's times when we do need to look at the overall perspective. I don't take credit for this and appreciate your kudos and whatnot, but this is.
You presented it, Ben.
This is really a discussion with everybody involved over a 2.5 year time frame of how are we gonna address the library, how are we gonna address public works, where's things gonna move together, and trying to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together in a manner that we can financially absorb. And I just can't stress enough how important it is that we are taking care of the needs of our first responders, and that's probably the hardest aspect is asking departments to be patient. But I do want to say it's so much better for us to start down a path with public support and working towards a plan that we can all get behind, as opposed to going to the ballot and getting a hard no, and then being in the hole, trying to crawl out of that hole, trying to figure out a plan B at that time, which would be so much more difficult because at that point, if there was a hard no, the community would be saying, well, we told you no, why are you trying to do it under different means? And so let's be responsive and responsible now so that we can earn and continue to retain the public's trust along the way. That's the big difference between these two plans. We didn't know that until the large numbers came in.
That $5.5 million for the police department, would that be a long-term solution for this building?
I think that's the only way to look at it. If we are gonna take out that money, we can't, I don't think it would be justifiable in any form to spend $5.5 million worth of taxpayer dollars unless it is a long-term solution. And so the real question on the table is it worth putting that money into this building? The preliminary review, we've had them go through and look at the guts of the building, and they're saying the bones are pretty good. Now we just need to get the costs and find out if this is a good use of taxpayer dollars or not. Certainly would give lots of expansion space, and the fire bays were never conceived of being bays that can be used by the police department to store their vehicles, and how could we improve those, and what can we do to make it a long-term solution for them? So all of that analysis is going on right now, because the last thing we want to do is put lipstick on a pig. Right? We want to make sure if this is a good investment, we're gonna put those dollars in. And if it's not, then we go a different direction and really put taxpayer dollars towards a long-term.
Would we stair step our projects, or would we just jump into all that? Moving start the public works building, start the renovations here, start the police department. Would it all be concurrent?
Parts of it would be and parts wouldn't. So what we're envisioning, if we go down that route or we go $30 million, because we feel like this is a good investment and supported by our police department, then what you would see is us moving forward with a standalone fire department and public works building. Those two going forward concurrently. That allows us to eventually move the fire department out, and also clears the way for public works to get out of the way for the library to move into that overall redevelopment area. We are already working on city administration and community development moving into the Regions Bank building. That's actually going to give wiggle room for both the police department to be able to expand into the community development space, and the fire department to move into the area occupied by finance and HR today, so that we can, both of them can have a little bit of breathing room while we're constructing the fire station. And that allows those two things to move forward. But we really can't remodel this building until fire moves out first. And then when we do remodel this building, we would envision that we would remodel the fire department section once they vacate, and move the police department over, and then remodel the rest of the building.
Okay, thank you.
So the money or the work that's going into Regions Bank, how much are we investing in that?
So it really depends on the answers to the questions that we get from the analysis that's going on right now. Right now, we're doing staff time. We're in some dumpster costs and whatnot. So our staff is going in and removing things, getting it prepared, getting it ready for us to be able to construct walls and put in new carpet and things like that. So we're prepping for an eventuality, but we're not expending a heck of a lot of cost other than our time that's already budgeted for operationally. We do envision that if in fact you decide that this is a good investment of those $5.5 million, then what we would likely do is take the Regions Bank portion of the building, which becomes available to us in March, and turn that into a council chamber and additional office space that we could bring all the folks that we have in the IMU building and have a little bit more room than we would have in the Optimate space today, and put our temporary city hall in that Regions Bank Optimate location. But it really depends on which direction you would have us go. If we move forward with demoing this building, we envision that this building would be $850,000 worth of demo. If we're not demoing this building, we're putting the $5.5 million. We could take the $850,000 and remodel that building by putting in the council chamber and making it more accessible, a better facade in the front that matches our square. But all the things that we're just exploring so that we can bring you more information. No, definite. If there's anything I can state, this whole thing is, everything is fluid right now. And we're working towards a revenue bond for your consideration.
I appreciate you closing with that comment, Ben. Like, I think this is wonderful and a great opportunity for us to normalize planning better, normalize having multiple projects going, right? And how to wisely plan for such things. But like, so everybody hears clearly, like if 50% of this looks like this at the end, by the time we get through it, that's pretty good. You know, it might be that much, maybe it's 80%. We really don't know. So none of this is gospel. This is us doing our best and staff's best to react to new inputs all the time and make sure that we're making wise decisions. So we're still dating this plan all the way through, right?
Yep, absolutely. The only time critical issue was getting ready for the ballot.
Correct.
Now that pressure is off, now our next time sensitive issue is determining what amount of revenue bond you want to go after.
Perfect.
Any other comments? Questions?
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yes, very much. Thanks for the presentation, so. Do you have anything else in your city manager's report you'd like to?
Don't.
Okay, so we will be moving into an exempt session here in a few moments. That exempt session is allowed under Iowa Code 20.17. Dealing with some negotiation issues we'll be doing with staff, and so I'd like to have a motion to move into an exempt session based on Iowa Code 20.17. We don't have to vote on it? Don't have to vote on it. Well, that's awesome. That's better yet. Okay.
We take a break.
Yeah, we'll take a short break to about 5 minutes and then we'll go into the council on.
Pretty immature.
We are going to close session right after that.
Three wobbles.
Three wobbles, I know. That last one was
Yeah.
tricky.